Assalamualaikum and good morning to all of you. Well, I'm so glad to be here. I'm so glad to have all of you here today. It's kind of good to see people from different backgrounds to show how serious we are in our journey to the world of sustainability. And today, we brought with us today people from all backgrounds, like I said, all our stakeholders. And what we're trying to do is to progressively, together with you, work towards this journey and show how serious we are in sustainability. I have 7 points I want to talk about very shortly. Munching, make sure that I don't talk too much. First is that maybe just a side note that, when we talk about sustainability at AirAsia, we look at sustainability not just from environment perspective, but understandably, unlike the other elements of sustainability, this is where we need a lot more push, both internally and externally. Now, we discussed at the board that some people relate sustainability is just the ESG, environment, social, and governance. Some, as you know today, is almost equal to environment. Maybe rightfully so, given where we are today. But at AirAsia, we look at it from several perspectives. From the economic and financial long-term viability of the company, that's sustainability. From the concept of PPT, process, people and technology, the long-term sustainability of the company from people, process, and technology, looking into all aspects of our own internal processes, whether it's sustainable, technology, the future of technology, whether we are sustainable, and also the organization health of the company, whether it's sustainable. Now, as you know today, almost everyone equate sustainability, however, not to all of those, but to just ESG. And as you know, the discussion today, whenever, in fact, 9 out of 10 sessions I've attended in sustainability, they talk about not all of the factors, but environment. Now, it's understandable because unlike the other elements, you look at social. I mean, we've been talking about it from almost day one, the existence of most of our companies. Governance, as you know, was a big topic about 2-3 decades ago, and became the center stage of the when you talk about sustainability. That time we didn't call it sustainability, and unlike for environment, it's relatively new. We'll talk about it later, as you can see, and I guess I can understand, coming from my different background, whereby unlike other elements of sustainability, like I say, economic viability of the company, PPT, process, people, technology, the S in the ESG, and the G, there's a need a lot more push for environment, because it doesn't come as natural as other elements of sustainability. So in this context, that today's session, while we call it sustainability, is primarily focused on the environmental sustainability, maybe rightfully so. That's my first point. The second point is that, when you talk about sustainability, especially in the environment, it has to come, unfortunately, I mentioned that it has to be pushed, but ideally, it has to come from the principles and beliefs of the company. That's the starting point. If the principle, the belief of the company is about long term, it's about our sustainability of the company in the long term, very long term and long term. It's about our responsibilities to ourselves, to the people, to the community, and to the planet. It has to start with that. The reason I bring up that as important is that, companies naturally are very short term. Our measurement system, you look at it, is very short term. Unfortunately, most investors are very short term. I mean, I know for a fact, because they talk to me about long term, but you can do whatever you like, you can say whatever you like, they want your quarterly results. And that determines whether they invest in you or not. And the public also, they can talk long term, but they will view you from a short term perspective. So it's quite challenging actually if you think about it. The whole community, the whole system that we have dealt with are very short term, whether we like it or not. So if we are being swayed easily by short term, we'll never worry about environment. But if we tell ourselves, hey, wait a minute, who are we? Why are we here? We have a long-term responsibilities to the company, not just tomorrow, next month, next year, even 5 years from now, even 10 years from now. We have responsibility to the community we serve, and we have responsibility to the planet that we all live in. It has to be deep inside us to be able to really feel the need for sustainability. I think that's a starting point. Unfortunately, like I said, if you think about the world today, how you're being measured, we have to tend to be short term, but it got to be from inside, the principle and belief that I just mentioned. That leads me to the third point. Unfortunately, if you look at most companies, whether it's the official formal system of measurement, whether it's informal, there's hardly anything about environment until recently, to be fair. Yeah, like AirAsia, like some of the companies I know, that suddenly it's part of the KPI for the first time. For some companies, it's like 1 year, 2 year, 3 year old. I mean, if you look at 4 or 5 years ago, it hardly exists. So I would strongly recommend that we all look at how do we measure ourselves from a long-term perspective. Even our short-term incentives tend to be without environment factor in it. Our long-term incentive as a company, but again, how do we change the world surrounding us, the stakeholders, to value us, to appreciate us also from an environmental and sustainability of element inside, whether it's formal or informal system, to value us. I mean, you look at you just look at the media, the newspaper, how many times they say, wow, this great company environment? Not too many. They talk about how good they are financially, how good they are in many other aspects, but hardly. But we got to get that system going. The fourth point is that, being involved in this for many years, the good news is that it's gaining momentum. But as you all know, that's why we are here today. Frankly, it's a long, long, long way to go. Now, it's good to see things are coming up to shape. I remember when I retired back in 2020, and I was working for a public listed company about 5-7 years ago. This concept of sustainability, environment, starting to become really big. But frankly, if I can be more blunt, it's pretty much a lip service. I met so many. I do road shows many years ago, almost about 5 times a year, and I met easily 60, 70, sometimes 100 people across in 1 year, investors. I can say that during the last 5-7 years plus minus ago, they talk about sustainability, environment, so important. Not even one question was asked to me about environment, despite that lip service, and despite that so-called importance of sustainability. It's a lip service. It was a lip service, frankly. Having said that, towards the end, before I retired in 2020, the last, maybe in 2019, 2020, even 2018, to be fair, suddenly there's more and more interest and question. I got cornered on what have I done on environment. It's more and more. It's a pretty good sign. But what I'm trying to say is quite recent, relatively speaking. And now, as you know, some investors, they have a basic minimum threshold before they want to invest in you. You have more financing scheme. Some scheme you can't even pass the test if you don't have concrete plans and targets for sustainability. So that's very, very encouraging. Now, in other words, we've passed. If you look at today, fortunately, we've passed that stage of awareness. Majority of companies, majority of people, majority of executive investors, the communities are now very much aware of sustainability and importance of environment. And I wouldn't say majority, perhaps, maybe it is they have embraced it. It becomes a strategy. It becomes part of the strategy, and it becomes part of the governance that they have set up to show how serious they are. However, like I said, how you're being measured, how you're being compensated is still lacking. The fifth point is that, I have to be very frank with you. When I started this journey about many years ago, I thought it's so simple. This whole thing about environment, don't use plastic. Even my daughter can tell me, please, Daddy, don't use plastic. Okay, don't waste too much, make sure you keep the air clean. That's all I thought. When I started the journey many years ago. And then started to be involved in it, I realized, wow, there's a lot more to be learned. So we got in consultant, we got people from third parties to teach us about environment. Wow, I realized I didn't know anything. I thought I was not bad. I know a bit more about environment. And because of the hours and, the focus on that, gosh, not bad. I know a lot. And then I after I retired, I saw a couple of presentations, and I don't know, I'm also a board member of Sunway. And when I look at what they have done, oh boy, I realized I don't know anything again. There's so much more to learn, and so much. And then I talked to Manching. Where's Manching? And she has done so much. Oh boy, I really know nothing at the end of the day. I'm really frank here. I'm learning. I feel that I'm in the, maybe I passed the kindergarten, maybe I'm standard 1, maybe standard 4 now in the world of sustainability environment. There's so much more to learn. And I realized one thing, it is a science. There's a lot of measurements, numbers. Those days I thought it's it's a hairy-fairy thing about air pollution and all that stuff, and plastics and all that. And I realized it is a science. Numbers, targets, and measurements to know where we are and where we want to be. So it's a lot more than I thought. And I hope we all can learn together, because it is science, it is a lot more complex than meets the eye. The sixth point I want to note, and I want to mention, is that we at AirAsia is very serious and very committed. It is not just about some great things that we have to say because we need to look good in front of all of you. We have embraced it in the strategy, in the measurements that I've just said earlier. And in fact, we have the day one, about 1 year plus ago, we've created the sustainability committee focused on that. We brought in consultant like Tan Sri Jamila to be our advisor. I cannot remember the name now. Hang on, and we brought in Kun Viratai from Thailand to also guide us, because, like I said, it's a lot more complex than meets the eye. And it's going to be our DNA. And I think when I look at Manching's presentation and what presented in the board and so on, I finally think, wow, our net zero in 2050 as our target is real. I can say that with full of conviction. It is real, we are extremely committed, and we want to make it happen. And fortunately for Asia, to be very frank also, our push, it doesn't have to be externally pushed, because when you look at our business, we are big in consumption in fuel, as you all know, right? It makes a lot of business sense. Forget about the word environment. It just makes a lot of business sense, which is dear to our heart, to actually focus on sustainability. And last but not least, we need to work together. We can't do it alone. I think Manching will elaborate further. When I look at this whole journey that we are in, we need to work with the government, the regulators, the communities, the investor communities, the suppliers, the vendors. For us, the aircraft is very important. The design of the aircraft will be make or break for us. The public, and even our competitors, our industry players. So that is one of the key messages. We need to work together in this journey. We cannot necessarily work against each other, or we need to build a community. We need to be collaborative support from each other. And also, like I said, it's a complex thing. It's a science. We need to learn from each other. With that, that's my 7 points I want to bring up. And again, I appreciate and thank you for all of you for being here. And I really appreciate Manching and Bo for arranging this session. It's a very good session. It's very timely. And I hope we all can together build this journey of sustainability. Thank you.